It wasn't worried. It was urgent, like a match being struck in a dark room. I froze at the top of the stairs, one sock half on, the other hand still gripping the banister. The hallway below smelled like fried onions and lemon floor cleaner, the exact smell of every childhood night that ever ended with somebody crying behind a locked door. She didn't know I was there. Her voice drifted from the kitchen, low and tight. Not a single sound, do you hear me? Pack your bags tonight. You leave before sunrise. A chair scraped. Someone inhaled shakily. A voice answered, smaller, trembling. Yes, Mama. Not my voice. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like I'd missed a stair. I leaned forward, heart punching against my ribs, and peeked down through the railing. My mother stood with her back to me, shoulders squared like armor. Her hands were on the table, gripping the wood so hard her knuckles looked pale. Across from her sat my little brother, Sammy, 16, all elbows and frightened eyes, his school tie loosened like he'd tried to pull air into his throat and couldn't. Sammy. My hands went cold. I'd been the one she always ordered around, the one she snapped at, the one who talked too much, the one who didn't understand sacrifices. But now she was whispering, like her life depended on it, to him. I must have made a sound, a breath, a shift, something, because my mother's head snapped up. Her eyes landed on me like a slap. For a second, everything went still. The ceiling fan hummed. The fridge clicked. Sammy's foot bounced under the table like it was trying to run away without him. "What are you doing up?" my mother asked, voice suddenly normal, sharp, like the mother everyone else knew. I swallowed. I heard you." Her jaw tightened. The muscles in her face moved like she was swallowing a secret. "You heard nothing. Go back upstairs." Sammy wouldn't meet my eyes. That told me everything and nothing at once. I walked down the last step slowly, like any sudden move might make something explode. "You told him to pack his bags." My mother's eyes flicked toward Sammy, warning. "Go to your room," she ordered him. Now. Sammy stood so fast his chair tipped. He caught it, hands shaking. His face was pale, lips pressed together like he'd swallowed a scream. He rushed past me without a word and vanished down the hall. Now it was just me and my mother, and the air between us, heavy as wet clothes. I stepped into the kitchen. The overhead light made everything look too bright, too honest. The dish rack was full, the sink spotless, because my mother cleaned when she was angry and she cleaned when she was afraid. On the table sat a suitcase. Not mine. A worn black suitcase with a broken zipper and scuffed corners. I recognized it immediately. It lived on the top shelf of the storage room, the one we only opened for Eid clothes and old photo albums. My mother followed my gaze and, for the first time, she looked caught. "What is that?" I asked softly. "It's nothing." She moved quickly, sliding the suitcase off the table as if removing it would erase the moment. "It's for who?" My voice cracked. "Because you didn't tell me to pack. You told him." Her eyes flashed. "Stop it." "Stop what?" I pressed, my chest tightening. "Listening? Being awake? Being your daughter?" She flinched at that, just a tiny twitch, like the word daughter pinched somewhere deep. I saw it, and it scared me more than her anger. "Why does Sammy have to leave?" I asked, slower now. "What happened?" My mother's mouth opened, then closed. She turned to the sink and began wiping an already clean counter with a cloth. Back and forth, like she could scrub the truth out of the tiles. "You always do this," she snapped. "You always make things bigger than they are." My throat burned. "I'm not making it bigger, Mama. You're the one whispering like someone's going to die." The cloth stopped. My mother's shoulders rose and fell in one long breath. Then she whispered, barely audible, because someone might. The words hit me like a door slamming. I took a step closer. "Who?" She didn't answer. I glanced toward the hallway where Sammy had gone. "Is he in trouble?" Silence. "Mama," I said, and this time my voice begged. "Tell me. Is Sammy in trouble? Did he do something?" My mother finally turned around, and her eyes weren't angry anymore. They were terrified, not the kind of fear that makes you scream, the kind that makes you quiet because you know noise will attract the monster. "He didn't do anything," she said. "He's innocent." My heart hammered. "Then why?" Her gaze darted to the window. The curtains were drawn, but I could feel the night outside anyway, thick, watching. "Because they think he did," she said. "And once people decide a story about you, you can't unwrite it." My skin prickled. "Who is they?" My mother's lips trembled. She pressed them together hard. Then she walked over to the spice cabinet and opened it like she was looking for cumin. Instead, she reached behind the jars and pulled out something flat and folded. A piece of paper. It looked like it had been read too many times. Creased, smudged, worn at the edges like a secret passed from hand to hand. She held it like it was dangerous. "What is that?" I whispered. She didn't answer. She just unfolded it slowly and slid it across the table toward me. I stared down. It was a letter, official, stamped, typed in stern black ink. My eyes caught words that made my stomach twist. Report, complaint, investigation, suspicion of theft. Then my eyes found the name, Sammy, my brother's full name, written like an accusation. My fingertips went numb. This is from... My mother cut me off sharply. "From the shop. From the police station. From men who don't care if he's a child." My mouth went dry. "The shop? The electronics store where he works part-time?" My mother nodded once. "They found money missing. They found receipts missing. And they found a boy who doesn't know how to defend himself in a room full of grown men." My ears rang. "Sammy wouldn't, I know," she whispered, tears suddenly glistening in her eyes. "I know my son." My hands shook as I held the paper. "So, we go explain. We go with a lawyer. My mother's laugh came out bitter, broken. "Lawyer? With what money?" I flinched. She wasn't wrong. My father had been gone for years, but not gone in the clean way. Gone in the way that left behind debts and whispers and neighbors who looked at our door like it was a stain. "What does this have to do with packing his bags tonight?" I asked, trying to hold my voice steady. "He can't just run. That looks guilty." My mother's face tightened. "It looks alive." I stared at her. She looked older than she had this morning, like fear had pressed wrinkles into her skin. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice until it was almost nothing. "I heard things," she said, "at the women's water tap. In the market. People are saying, they're saying the owner's cousin wants an example made, that boys like Sammy need to be taught a lesson, that they'll come here." My blood turned to ice. She wasn't talking about police. She was talking about men who didn't need uniforms. I whispered, "When?" My mother swallowed. "Tonight." Something in my chest snapped, not loudly but cleanly, like a thread finally breaking. I looked toward the hall again, imagining Sammy in his room, probably sitting on his bed, staring at his hands, wondering how innocence could feel like a crime. And I realized something that made my stomach churn with a different kind of fear. My mother wasn't telling me to pack because she didn't think I needed saving. She wasn't telling me because she thought I was the one who could stay behind, the one who could face whatever came, the one who could be used as a shield. My voice came out raw. "Why didn't you tell me?" My mother's eyes searched mine, wet and fierce. "Because you're my daughter," she whispered, "and daughters are." Her voice broke, and she looked away like the rest of the sentence was a blade she couldn't swallow. I didn't know what I was supposed to be. Disposable? Silent? Strong? But I knew what I felt. Betrayed. Not just by the world outside our walls, by the fact that my mother had already made a plan where my brother ran, and I stayed. I set the paper down carefully like it might explode. Then I said the words that changed everything. "If Sammy leaves tonight, I'm going with him." My mother's head jerked up. "No." "Yes." Her voice rose. Panicked. "Absolutely not." I stepped closer, my heart beating like a drum before war. You told him to pack. Fine. But you don't get to decide I'm the one who stays behind to take the hit. You don't get to whisper life or death plans like I'm furniture in this house. My mother's eyes filled. You don't understand, I understand perfectly, I snapped, my voice shaking now. You weren't talking to me, Mama. But I heard you anyway. And now, I'm listening. The house felt suddenly too small, the walls too thin. Outside, somewhere in the street, a motorcycle passed with a growl that made my spine stiffen. My mother flinched. And in that flinch, I saw the truth. Something was already moving toward us. And this suitcase on the table wasn't just luggage. It was a symbol, a warning, a choice. Leave or be taken. I stared at my mother. Tell me the whole truth, I said, voice low, right now. Because I swear on everything I am, if you're hiding something bigger than this letter, I will find it. My mother looked at me for a long moment, tears balancing on the edge of her lashes. Then she whispered words I never expected to hear from her mouth. Your brother isn't the one they're coming for. My breath caught, and she added, voice trembling like a candle in wind, they're coming for the person who stole the money. I stared at her. Then, who did? My mother's lips parted. Her eyes dropped to my hands, and the room tilted, like the world itself was bracing for impact. Because, she whispered, it wasn't Sammy. My throat closed. Mama, she didn't look up when she said the last line, the line that made my blood go cold. It was you. For a second, I swear I couldn't hear anything. Not the ceiling fan, not the distant barking dog, not even my own breathing. Just that sentence sitting on my chest like a brick. It was you. I stared at my mother as if she'd spoken in another language. No, I said automatically, like the word could rewind time. No, that's not. My mother's eyes finally lifted to mine. There was no anger in them, no pride. Just a raw, exhausted truth that looked like it had been living behind her ribs for years. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. My knees felt weak. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. The wood was cold under my fingers. You? Stole money from Sammy's job? She flinched at the word stole like I'd slapped her. I took it, she corrected, voice cracking. I took it because I had to. That's the same thing, I snapped, then immediately hated how sharp I sounded. Because it wasn't just shock in me, it was fear. A fear so huge it made my mouth mean. My mother pressed her palm to her forehead. If I tell you why, you'll hate me. I stopped myself. My throat burned. Just tell me. She swallowed, and the kitchen light caught the wetness on her cheeks. Do you remember the gold bangle? I blinked. What? The one your grandmother gave you when you were little. Her voice was thin. The one with the tiny flower carving. My heart stuttered. I did remember. I remembered touching it in the drawer sometimes, like it was proof we'd once been loved properly. It disappeared, I said slowly. Years ago. My mother nodded once, and it felt like a funeral bell. I sold it. My mouth dropped open. I sold it, she repeated. Louder now, desperate. I sold your bangle, and then I sold my wedding ring, and then I sold the last pair of earrings your father ever bought me. And I still couldn't cover it. Cover what? I demanded. My mother's fingers gripped the back of a chair like it might carry her away. Your father's debt. The word debt sliced the air. I felt something hot rise in my chest. Baba's debt was years ago. He left. And the debt didn't leave with him, she said harshly, then softened. It stayed, like a shadow, like a curse. I took a shaky breath. Who? My mother hesitated, like saying the name would summon them. The men he borrowed from, she whispered. The kind of men you don't argue with. The kind of men who don't forget. I'd heard rumors in the neighborhood growing up, whispers about my father being too ambitious and too friendly with the wrong people. But my mother always shut it down, always forced a smile, always told me, your father is gone. That's all that matters. But now, the lie was cracked open. How much? I asked. My mother gave a tiny laugh that sounded like she was choking. Enough to keep me awake for years. I shook my head. So you stole from Sammy's job to pay them? My mother's face crumpled. Not at first. At first I tried to bargain. I tried to ask for time. I tried to cry. Do you know what men like that do when a woman cries? She looked straight at me. They watch, and then they take more. My stomach churned. They came last week, she continued, voice trembling. They said if I didn't pay what I owed by the end of the month, they'd take something else. I swallowed. What? My mother's gaze dropped to the floor. Sammy. My blood froze. They said boys are easy to teach lessons to, she whispered. They said they'd make him a warning. My vision blurred. Mama, why didn't you tell me? She snapped her head up, sudden fury flashing. Because you're my daughter and you already carry enough. Her voice broke. Because you've been strong since you were 10. Because I didn't want you to look at me like I'm looking at myself right now. I felt my eyes burn. So you decided to sacrifice him instead? I didn't. She cried. I tried to save him. I tried to save both of you. And your solution was stealing? I said, shaking. From his job? The one thing he had that made him feel like he mattered? My mother's shoulders collapsed. I didn't take much, she whispered, just a little at a time. Small notes from the cash drawer when the shop was crowded. I thought nobody would notice. But they did, I said, my voice turning hollow. She nodded, tears rolling now. They did. And then they wrote his name. Because it's easier to blame the boy than the mother. Because the boy is the one who shows his face every day. I pressed my fingers to my lips. The room felt like it was shrinking. Why would you even be at his job? I asked, trying to make it make sense. My mother wiped her face quickly, like she was ashamed of her own tears. I started picking him up sometimes, she said. I'd wait near the counter. I'd watch the crowd. And when I saw an opening, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. I pictured her, my mother, the woman who ironed our uniforms like they were armor, the woman who could scold the neighbors into silence, slipping bills into her sleeve. My chest tightened until breathing hurt. And what now? I asked. You think sending him away fixes this? My mother lifted her chin, stubborn even in shame. It gives him a chance. My cousin in Lahore will hide him. He'll stay there until the heat dies down. And what about you? I demanded. Her eyes didn't flinch. I'll stay. I felt anger flare. So you're going to stand here and wait for the men my father owed? Or the shop people? Or whoever shows up first? My mother's mouth trembled. If someone has to face it, it should be me. And what about me? I whispered. My mother's eyes softened, and that softness hurt more than the harshness ever had. You'll be fine, she said, like she was trying to believe it. You always are. That sentence landed like a knife. Because I understood it now. My mother had decided what I was in this family. The one who survives. The one who bends. The one who cleans up. Not the one who's protected. I swallowed my rage and forced my voice steady. Sammy doesn't know it was you, does he? My mother's silence answered. I turned toward the hallway, suddenly dizzy. You let him believe it's his fault. My mother rushed forward, grabbing my arm. He can't know, she pleaded. It will destroy him. I yanked my arm back. And what do you think it's doing to him right now? Packing a bag like he's a criminal? My mother's face crumpled again. I couldn't let him look at me with hate, she whispered. I couldn't. I stared at her, shaking. So you let him hate himself instead. That broke something in her. She sank into a chair, hands covering her face, and that's when I noticed the other thing on the table. A small cloth bundle tied with string. My stomach tightened. What's that? My mother didn't answer, still crying behind her hands. I stepped closer and untied the string slowly, like I was defusing a bomb. Inside was a stack of folded money, thick, messy, not enough to look clean. And beneath it, a photograph. old, slightly faded. It showed my mother, younger, smiling, standing beside a man. But it wasn't my father. My breath caught as I stared. The man's arm was around her shoulder possessively. His eyes were sharp, dangerous even in a still image. And behind them, on the wall, was a signboard from a place I recognized. The electronics shop where Sammy worked. My mouth went dry. I looked up at my mother. "Who is this?" She lowered her hands slowly, eyes red. Her voice came out like a confession dragged through glass. "That," she whispered, "is the reason I told Sammy to pack." I stared at the photo, my heart pounding. Because I knew, deep down before she even said it, this wasn't just about stolen money. It was about someone who had been watching our family for a long time. And my mother had been hiding him from us. I held up the photo with shaking fingers. "Mama," I whispered, "tell me the truth." She swallowed hard, then said the words that made my stomach drop again. "He's your father, too." For a moment, the photograph refused to make sense. "He's your father, too." The words echoed, hollow and unreal, like they'd been spoken inside a tunnel. I stared down at the image again, hoping my eyes would rearrange it into something safer. My mother's younger face, her smile, not the tired smile I knew, but something softer. Something trusting. And that man beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder like he owned the space she stood in. My chest tightened painfully. "That's not funny," I whispered. "Please tell me you're not joking." My mother didn't move, didn't blink. "I never joked about things like this," she said quietly. My knees buckled, and I sat down hard in the chair opposite her. The wood creaked beneath me. My fingers trembled so badly I had to clutch the edge of the table again. "You told me Baba was my father," I said, my voice barely working. "You told me he left because he was weak. Because he chose himself over us. He raised you," my mother said quickly. "He loved you." "That's not what I asked," I snapped, then softened immediately because her face looked like it was collapsing inward. "Why didn't you tell me?" she inhaled shakily. "Because the truth wasn't safe." I laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised even me. "Nothing about tonight is safe." She nodded slowly. "I know." I pressed the photograph flat against the table. "Start from the beginning." My mother closed her eyes as if bracing herself. "I was young," she began, "too young to understand how power works. He was older, influential. Everyone respected him. Or feared him. I didn't know the difference then. My throat tightened. "You loved him?" She hesitated. I thought I did. I felt something bitter rise in my mouth. "And Baba?" "He came later," she said. "He was kind, gentle. He wanted a family, not control." When I realized who the other man really was, I ran. "And you were already pregnant," I said, the pieces slamming together. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "With you." The room tilted. My hands flew to my stomach instinctively, like the truth might punch its way out of me. "He didn't let you go," I whispered. "No," she said. "He didn't." I remembered the way my mother locked doors even during the day, the way she scanned faces in crowds, the way she never let me post pictures online, never let Sammy use his full name on applications. It wasn't paranoia. It was survival. "He found us years later," she continued, "after you were born. He wanted you." My heart slammed. "Me?" "You were his blood," she whispered, "his legacy." My chest burned. "And Baba?" She swallowed. "He stood between us." I looked at her sharply. "Is that why Baba left?" Her silence screamed louder than any confession. "He didn't just leave, did he?" I said slowly. "He was pushed." My mother's lips trembled. "They ruined him, his business, his reputation, his name. They left him with nothing but debt and shame." Rage exploded inside me. "And you let me believe he abandoned us?" "I let you believe he was human," she said, voice breaking. "Because the truth would have destroyed you." I dragged a hand down my face, breathing hard. "So the debt, the men, the shop, it all traces back to him," she said. "He owns half the businesses in this area, including the shop. My blood ran cold. You mean, I swallowed. Sammy's boss works for him, she finished. And when money went missing, it wasn't about the money. My heart pounded violently. It was about us. About you, she corrected. I stood up abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. So Sammy is being punished to reach me. My mother nodded, tears flowing freely now. They know he matters to you. They know I'd do anything to protect him. My stomach twisted. Then why send him away? Because they're not after him, she said urgently. They're using him, and if he stays, they'll hurt him just to make you obey. Obey what? I demanded. She looked at me with a pain so deep it hollowed her eyes. They want you to come. The room spun. Come, where? To him, she whispered. He sent word. He said if you come willingly, everything stops. The debt disappears. Sammy is cleared. No one touches us again. I laughed again, louder this time, bordering on hysteria. You expect me to walk into the arms of a man like that? I expect you to stay alive, she cried. I expect you to keep your brother safe. And what about me? I shouted. What happens to me? Her mouth opened. Closed. The silence answered. I felt something inside me go very still. So that's it, I said softly. That's why you weren't talking to me. You were talking to Sammy because he's the piece you can move. I'm the price. My mother stood suddenly, grabbing my shoulders. You are not a price, she sobbed. You're my daughter. Then why does it feel like you're handing me over? I whispered. She pulled me into her chest, holding me tightly like she used to when I was little. I smelled her familiar scent, soap and old cotton, and it almost broke me. I thought if I didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't be real, she murmured into my hair. I thought I could buy time. A loud knock slammed against the front door. 3 sharp strikes. My body froze. The knock came again. Louder. More confident. My mother's grip tightened. They're early. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. Sammy, I whispered. He's still here. She pulled back, eyes wild. You have to decide. Right now. Another knock, followed by a man's voice from outside. Calm. Dangerous. We know you're home. My blood turned to ice. My mother shoved the suitcase toward me. Take Sammy and go out the back. Now. I stared at her. What about you? I'll handle this, she said, even though fear shook her voice. I shook my head. No. This ends tonight. She grabbed my face. Please. For a second, I almost obeyed. Then I thought of Sammy packing his bag like a criminal. Of Baba destroyed by a truth he never told. Of my life being negotiated without my consent. I took a breath so deep it hurt. No, I said firmly. I'm done running. The knocking grew louder. My mother whispered, if you open that door, you can never take it back. I walked toward the front door anyway. My hand hovered over the handle. And as my fingers closed around the cold metal, I realized something that changed everything. They thought I was afraid. They thought I'd come quietly. They were wrong. Because tonight, I wasn't packing my bags to disappear. I was opening the door to confront the past that had hunted us for years. And whatever stood on the other side was about to learn that daughters raised in silence do not break easily. The door felt heavier than it should have, like it knew what would happen once it opened. My fingers tightened around the handle, and for one last second I felt my mother's eyes burning into my back, not angry, not commanding, pleading. I opened it anyway. The night air rushed in, cold and sharp, carrying the smell of dust and petrol. 2 men stood on our doorstep. One was tall and broad, arms crossed, eyes empty, the kind of man whose job was to make other people afraid. The other was shorter, dressed neatly, almost politely. He smiled when he saw me. That smile made my skin crawl. "Good evening," he said. "You must be her." I didn't answer. Behind me, my mother stepped forward, her voice trembling but controlled. "You shouldn't be here." The man smiled wider. We're right on time. His gaze slid past me, scanning the house like it already belonged to him. Is the boy ready? My jaw clenched. He's not going anywhere. The man's eyebrows lifted in mock surprise. Ah, he said softly, you speak first. That explains a lot. He turned his attention fully to me now, eyes sharp. You look just like your mother did at your age. I felt my stomach twist, but I held his gaze. You should leave. A quiet laugh escaped him. You really are his daughter. That word, his, landed like poison. My mother moved between us. You said no one would be hurt if she came willingly, and no one has been, he replied smoothly. Yet. The tall man shifted behind him, cracking his knuckles slowly. I took a step forward. You framed my brother. The smiling man tilted his head. Framed is such an ugly word. Let's say we encouraged a misunderstanding. You used him, I said, my voice shaking with fury. You terrorized a child. His smile didn't fade. Children grow up. Fear teaches them quickly. Something inside me snapped. You don't get to talk about teaching, I said, my hands curling into fists. You destroy people and call it order. For the first time, his eyes hardened. Careful, he warned. You're not in a position to insult me. I laughed, short, bitter. You think you're in control because you showed up at night with threats. But if you were really in control, you wouldn't need me to open the door. The silence stretched. My mother gasped softly, like she hadn't realized what she'd raised until this moment. The man studied me carefully now. You're smarter than I expected. You don't know the half of it, I said. He exhaled slowly. Let's not make this difficult. You come with us. The boy's name disappears from the report. The debt is forgiven. Your mother lives peacefully. And what happens to me? I asked. His gaze lingered. You'll have everything you deserve. I felt sick. You mean everything you want? He stepped closer. Too close. You belong with your blood, he said quietly. You always have. I leaned in too, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You don't know what runs in my blood. His eyes flickered. Behind us, a door creaked. Sammy, my mother whispered. My heart dropped. My brother stood in the hallway, clutching his backpack, eyes wide with terror as he took in the scene. No, I said sharply. Go back. But it was too late. The smiling man turned. Ah, the boy. Sammy froze. The tall man took one step forward. I moved instantly, placing myself between them and Sammy. Don't look at him. The smiling man raised a hand, signaling the other to stop. Easy, he said. You see? This is exactly why we came. My chest heaved. You don't need him. You want me. Yes, he said simply. And now that everyone understands that, let's stop pretending. Sammy's voice trembled. Appa, what's happening? I glanced back at him, forcing my voice steady. Go to Mama. Now. He didn't move. The smiling man sighed. This is becoming emotional. I don't like emotional. I snapped. Then you shouldn't have come to a house full of people you hurt. Something shifted in his expression. Annoyance. Maybe even respect. You think standing tall makes you powerful, he said. But power is knowing when to submit. I straightened. No. Power is knowing when to refuse. Silence fell again. Then, from down the street, a sound cut through the night. Sirens, faint at first, then louder. The tall man stiffened. The smile finally slipped from the other man's face. My mother sucked in a sharp breath. What did you do? I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on him. I made a call, I said calmly, to the one thing you can't own. The man's jaw tightened. You think the police scare me? No, I said. But exposure does. The sirens grew closer. I recorded everything, I continued. Your threats, your conditions, your confession. And I sent copies. To a lawyer, to a journalist, to 3 people who've been waiting for your name to slip. His eyes darkened. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. His own voice filled the air. "The boy's name disappears. If she comes willingly," Sammy gasped. My mother covered her mouth. The man took a step back. "You underestimated me," I said. "Just like you underestimated my mother when you thought fear would keep her silent." The sirens were loud now. Flashing blue light reflected off nearby windows. The tall man muttered something under his breath. The smiling man stared at me, fury simmering under forced calm. "This isn't over. It is for tonight," I replied, "and tonight is all you get." The sirens screeched to a stop nearby. Footsteps, voices. The men backed away, retreating into the shadows like they'd never been there at all. The street flooded with light and noise. I finally exhaled. My knees gave out, and I leaned against the doorframe, shaking. Sammy rushed to me, gripping my arm. "Appa, are we safe?" I looked at him, at my mother behind him, her face wet with tears and awe. "For tonight," I said softly, and for the first time, those words didn't feel like a lie. The house didn't feel the same once the sirens faded. It was quieter than before, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that rings in your ears after something loud and violent has passed. Like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what we would do next. The police asked questions, lots of them. They separated us gently, like they already knew this wasn't a simple story. I watched my mother sit on the sofa, hands folded in her lap, answering in short, careful sentences. I watched Sammy hug his backpack like it was the only thing anchoring him to the ground. I watched myself speak in a voice I didn't recognize, steady, clear, unafraid, even though my legs were still shaking. When they finally left, the front door clicked shut with a finality that made my chest ache. Morning was still hours away. We sat in the living room without turning on the TV. The single bulb above us cast long shadows on the walls, shadows that looked like all the versions of ourselves we'd been before tonight. No one spoke at first. Then Sammy broke the silence. "Why were they here?" he asked quietly. My mother flinched. I reached for his hand before she could stop herself. His palm was cold. "Because of a mistake," I said gently. "One that wasn't yours." He looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. "They think I stole." "They don't anymore," I said firmly. "But they wrote my name," he whispered. "They said, they lied," I said louder now, "and we're going to make sure everyone knows it." He swallowed hard. Why? The question wasn't about the shop anymore. It was about everything. My mother's shoulders began to shake. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling freely now, the kind she'd swallowed for years. "I did it," she said suddenly. "I took the money." Sammy stared at her, stunned. "Mama?" My chest tightened, but I didn't interrupt. "I was trying to protect you," she continued, voice breaking, "from a debt that never should have existed, from men who don't forgive. I thought if I carried the sin alone, you'd both be safe." Sammy shook his head slowly, like he couldn't process it. "You let me believe I was a thief." My mother dropped to her knees in front of him. "I'm so sorry." The room filled with her sobs, deep, ugly, honest. Sammy didn't pull away. He just stood there, frozen, like a child who'd been handed too much truth at once. Then he whispered, "I was so scared. That did it." My mother wrapped her arms around him, crying into his shoulder, and for the first time I didn't feel invisible watching them. I felt like a witness to something necessary, something painful but real. After a long time, Sammy spoke again. "Is it over?" I hesitated. "Not completely." My mother looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "The man who came tonight, he won't disappear easily. But he won't move openly anymore, not with recordings, witnesses, and attention on him." Sammy frowned. "You knew he'd come?" I nodded. "I suspected." My mother stared at me. "That's why you weren't afraid." "I was terrified," I admitted. "I just refused to let fear make decisions for me anymore." She reached for my hand, gripping it tightly. "You shouldn't have had to do that." "But I did," I said softly. "Because nobody else could. The truth hung between us. Heavy. Undeniable." Later, after Sammy finally went to his room and collapsed onto his bed without changing his clothes, my mother and I sat together in the kitchen. The suitcase was still there, unpacked, useless now. My mother stared at it for a long time. "I was ready to lose him," she whispered, "to save you." "And I was ready to lose myself," I replied, "to save him." She looked at me with eyes full of regret. "I taught you that." "Yes," I said, "but tonight I unlearned it." She nodded slowly. We didn't sleep much that night. When morning finally crept in through the windows, it felt unreal, soft and ordinary, like nothing had happened. The call to prayer echoed faintly in the distance, grounding me in the fact that time hadn't stopped for our fear. The next days moved fast. A lawyer contacted us. Then another. The shop's owner suddenly became cooperative. Sammy's name was cleared quietly, officially. No charges, no record. People in the neighborhood started whispering again, but this time the whispers were cautious. Something had shifted, and so had I. I started making plans. Not escape plans, real ones. Applications, jobs, names written in full, without fear. I refused to live like a shadow anymore. One evening, as I packed my bag for work, my mother stood in my doorway. "Where are you going?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Forward." She nodded, tears glistening. "I wish I had been braver sooner." "You were brave," I said. "You just didn't know it yet." She hesitated. "Will you forgive me?" I thought of the years of silence, of the weight she'd placed on my shoulders without asking, of the truth she'd hidden to protect us and herself. "I already am," I said honestly. "But things will be different now." She nodded. "I know," and for the first time I believed her. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the moment I'd overheard her whisper. "Pack your bags tonight." She hadn't been talking to me. But somehow, those words had still reached me. They'd forced me to open a door I'd been avoiding my whole life. And once opened, there was no closing it again. Weeks passed. Not the kind that heal everything, the kind that teach you how to live with what happened. Life didn't magically become lighter after that night. It became clearer. And clarity, I learned, is heavier than ignorance but far less suffocating. The man didn't come back. Not openly. But his absence was loud. The shop owner stopped avoiding our street. The neighbors stopped pretending not to see us. Power, once exposed, loses its teeth. It can still bite, but it can't smile while doing it. The lawyer said the recordings had done more damage than we realized, not just to him, but to others like him. Quiet inquiries began. Doors closed that used to open with a nod. My mother followed the news obsessively, fear still stitched into her bones. Every time a motorcycle slowed near the house, she stiffened. Every unknown number made her flinch. But something else changed too. She stopped whispering. One afternoon, while folding laundry in the sunlit room, she spoke without looking at me. "I lived my whole life believing silence was protection. I folded a shirt slowly. It kept us alive." "Yes," she said, "but it also kept us small." That was the first time she admitted it. Sammy healed differently. At first, he barely spoke. He'd wake up suddenly at night, breathing fast, eyes wide like he was still standing in the hallway, watching strangers claim his future. Then one morning, he put on his uniform and said, "I'm going back to school." My mother panicked. I saw it in her hands. But Sammy looked at her, really looked, and said, "If I hide forever, they still win." I'd never been prouder. He walked out the door with his head high, not because he wasn't afraid, but because fear no longer decided for him. As for me, I stopped waiting for permission. I took a job in a neighboring city. It paid less than promised and demanded more than advertised, but it was mine. I traveled alone. I spoke my full name without lowering my voice. I learned that confidence isn't loud, it's steady. One evening, months later, I found my mother sitting at the kitchen table with the same old black suitcase open in front of her. My heart jumped. "What are you doing?" She looked up and smiled, a real smile. "Giving it away." Inside the suitcase were old clothes, expired papers, things we'd carried just in case. "Just in case of what?" I asked. "Running," she said. "I'm tired of running." She zipped the suitcase closed and pushed it aside. Then she did something that made my throat tighten. She reached into the drawer and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a gold chain. Simple. New. "I bought this for you," she said. "Not to replace what I sold. Nothing can. But because I wanted you to have something that wasn't taken from you." I held it in my palm. It was warm from her hands. "Wear it when you choose," she added. "Not because I say so." I hugged her then, not like a child clinging to safety, but like two women who had survived the same storm from different sides. The final reckoning came quietly. A letter arrived one afternoon. No threats. No demands. Just a formal notice. Investigation ongoing. My mother stared at it for a long time, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. "I won't burn this," she said. "I won't hide it. I won't beg." That night, she slept deeply for the first time in years. I lay awake, thinking about the whisper that had started it all. "Pack your bags tonight." She hadn't been talking to me. But she should have been. And in a strange way, she was. Because those words weren't just instructions. They were a warning about what happens when women are taught to disappear quietly. About what families do when fear becomes tradition. About the cost of choosing survival over truth, and the greater cost of never choosing truth at all. I didn't pack my bags that night. I unpacked something heavier. A legacy of silence. And when I finally stood in front of the mirror weeks later, fastening that gold chain around my neck, I saw someone new looking back at me. Not a sacrifice. Not a shield. Not a secret. Just a woman who opened a door when she was told to stay quiet. And learned that sometimes the most dangerous